Impeachment Article 2 unconstitutionally removing United States residents, migrants, and asylum seekers to foreign prisons. Prepared by Free Speech for People. Illegally and unconstitutionally removing United States residents, migrants, and asylum seekers to foreign prisons in his conduct of the office of President of the United States, Donald John Trump, in violation of his constitutional oath faithfully to execute the office of President of the United States and, to the best of his ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, and in violation of his constitutional duty to take care that the laws be faithfully executed, has prevented, obstructed, and impeded the administration of justice, in that Donald John Trump, using the powers of his high office, engaged personally and through his close subordinates and agents, in a course of conduct or plan to remove people from the United States, pay foreign governments to imprison them in foreign prisons or camps without due process, and disavow responsibility for the prisoners, including the responsibility to return them to United States soil when ordered to do so by United States courts. In furtherance of this scheme, Donald John Trump, directly or through his close subordinates, has 1. Paid El Salvador $6 million using United States taxpayer dollars to accept and imprison more than 230 mostly Venezuelan men who sought refuge in the United States. These men remain imprisoned in an overcrowded maximum security prison known as Centro de Confinamiento del Terrorismo, CECOT, and are being deprived of basic human rights, including access to attorneys. Senior officials and close allies of Trump ordered or were otherwise involved in smuggling the migrants out of the United States via planes that took off in secret and in order to evade court oversight. Although Trump and senior officials within his administration claim that these individuals are members of a Venezuelan gang, they have not presented any evidence in a court of law to support these claims. 2. Forcibly and unlawfully removed Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia to CECOT, in violation of a court order prohibiting Mr. Abrego Garcia's removal to El Salvador, a country he fled as a child to escape persecution of El Salvadoran gangs. Senior Trump officials have refused to orchestrate or facilitate his return, in defiance of multiple court orders and despite the fact that his imprisonment was facilitated and continues to be paid for by the United States government using United States taxpayer dollars, and he remains unlawfully imprisoned under abusive, inhumane conditions. 3. Arrested, shackled, and forcibly removed more than 100 migrants, including children, to Panama because their countries of origin would not accept them. The migrants were stripped of their passports, barred from seeing attorneys, and locked as prisoners first in a hotel and then in a remote encampment in the jungle. 4. Engaged in ongoing efforts to remove Venezuelan men to be imprisoned in CECOT in El Salvador without due process, including by moving immigrants between 3 Julie Turkiewicz et al., migrants, deported to Panama under Trump plan, detained in remote jungle camp, New York Times, February 19, 2015, immigration detention facilities to evade United States court oversight. 5. Announced plans to expand this scheme to include the removal of United States citizens to be imprisoned in El Salvador, specifically by telling Salvadoran President Bukele that, he homegrowns are next. You've got to build about 5 more places. The imprisonment of migrants to the United States in foreign prisons and the plans to imprison United States citizens in foreign prisons deprive prisoners of the rights afforded to them by the United States Constitution and constitute a direct assault on the rule of law in this country. As was explained in a unanimous 3-judge ruling of the United States Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit in Mr. Abrego Garcia's case. If today the executive claims the right to deport without due process and in disregard of court order, what assurances will there be tomorrow that it will not deport American citizens and then disclaim responsibility to bring them home, and what assurances shall there be that the executive will not train its broad discretionary power upon its political Kyle Cheney et al., Trump, in a rare move, deferred to another world leader? It's a clear legal play. Politico, April 14, 2025. The threat, even if not the actuality, would always be present, and the executive's obligation to take care that the laws be faithfully executed would lose its meaning. Despite the Fourth Circuit's ruling and the warning contained therein, Donald John Trump has refused to facilitate, orchestrate, or even demand the return of Mr. Abrego Garcia to the United States, and has not withdrawn his request that the Salvadoran president build more prisons to hold United States citizens. In all of this, Donald John Trump has acted in a manner contrary to his trust as president and subversive of constitutional government, to the great prejudice of the cause of law and justice and to the manifest injury of the people of the United States.
Abrego García v.
Num, no.
25 to 1404, 2025 WL 113-5112, at *2, 4th Circle April 17, 2025. Wherefore Donald John Trump, by such conduct, warrants impeachment and trial, and removal from office.
The Article 3 issue of Free Speech for the People's effort to get people to sign the petition to impeach Donald Trump is extremely important. Effectively, what the Trump administration is doing is taking people who they give some sort of classification of being here illegally or whatever, right? Grabbing them and then throwing them into a prison in another country. And while they're there, there is no ability for the courts to call you back, to see whether or not your violations of, cruel and unusual punishment, your ability to, have an attorney to be able to see whether or not they're saying about you is so, and that how they are saying that Abrego Garcia is also involved in human trafficking and drug dealing and all these other things, which is basically convicting him without allowing him to simply be able to appear in court to face charges for what they're claiming he has done. But these powers, you have to look at the totality of the other amendments, particularly Article 10 and Article 11. Article 10 is the usurping of state power, trying to utilize the power of the presidency of the United States to replace the ability for your state to operate independent under the 10th Amendment of the Constitution. In other words, if he wants to be able to grab people in your state, you, in your state, say you are illegal and send you to some prison somewhere in the world in which no court can bring you back. And of course, Trump's biggest fear, is when it comes to issues like, 18 U.S.C. 242, deprivation of rights under color of law, or benevolence actions, which would be brought by your state, you protecting in your state, or your city prosecutor protecting you, because that is where you get protected. But that is nothing if he can simply obliterate the 10th Amendment of the Constitution and just grab a hold of you in your state, and then your state's prosecutors, your local city DA, doesn't protect you because he can usurp their power. And Article 11. Article 11 is where this comes from, this ability for him to be able to just simply grab you and throw you off into distant prisons, is the illegal use of emergency power and wartime powers to be able to say that he can do exactly that. This is where this gets very important, where you have to not just see the 16 articles as individual articles. They wrap on top of each other. It's why it's important that Americans not only just simply at this point be lobbying for impeachment, but also to see where inside of this you can actually utilize things like 18 U.S.C. 242, which is criminal penalties putting government officials in prison We're taking away your rights, because in this particular case of grabbing you and throwing you into a prison in which the courts never get to see you, the time to be able to do that would be now. Because when you are in that other country and they're claiming that you are a criminal, that you are drugs and human trafficking and everything else they say that Abrego Garcia and these other people have done, the saying that they have committed these crimes, they're going to say that about you while you're in a distant country and you're not even knowing that this is even on the damn news because you're in the prison in the other country, waiting for hopefully one day that the courts find a way to allow Trump to be able to grab you or come with such force to be able to drag you back here to have your day in court. And all of this is done in the illegal and immoral use of executive power done in the event of emergencies and wartime. We need to do more than just simply be searching for impeachment. We need to be looking at what rights do we have to be able to take civil actions, even criminal actions, to protect ourselves and our friends and our families and our neighbors and the members of our state and our cities, to protect ourselves against an administration that clearly is wanting to ignore the Constitution. So yes, sign the petition, but get more active. Thank you.